Mom, if you don't like it, you can leave. My son's voice echoed off the walls of my own house. He was yelling at me, my Robert, my only son. He was yelling at me like he never had in his life. My name is Patricia Miller. I am 56 years old. I was an elementary school teacher for 30 years. I became a widow 8 years ago when my husband passed away from a massive heart attack. I have one son, Robert, who today looks at me as if I were his worst enemy, and what I'm about to tell you changed my life forever. I was standing in front of my bedroom door, looking at something I still couldn't process. Mrs. Ellen, my daughter-in-law's mother, asleep in my bed, lying in my sheets, surrounded by her things. Her creams on my dresser, her clothes in my closet, her slippers next to my nightstand, as if this were her place, as if I were the intruder. Robert. I tried to speak, but my voice came out choked. I had just returned from a work trip, a week away, and I was coming home to this. No, Mum. Enough. His eyes were red with rage. Never in 56 years of life had I seen my son look at me like that. Mrs. Ellen is going through a really tough time. She needs peace. She needs a comfortable space. And you come in making drama over a simple room. A simple room? The words barely came out of my mouth. Robert, it's my room. It's my bed. This is my house. It's our house, he shouted louder. We live here. Danielle and I pay the utilities. We have rights too. Every word was a stab. I felt as if the floor were moving beneath my feet. She needs comfort, he continued, barely lowering his tone but maintaining that hardness that felt completely alien to me. She's your granddaughter's grandma. Danielle is devastated seeing her mother suffer, and all you can do is think about yourself. But I tried to explain. If you find it so terrible to help, he interrupted, if you can't have a little empathy, if your comfort is more important than the well-being of this family. He paused. He looked at me with a contempt I never imagined seeing in my own son's eyes. Then leave. Nobody is forcing you to stay. If you find it so awful, you can leave. The silence that followed was deafening. You can leave. Those 2 words fell on me like a death sentence. They erased me. They turned me into nothing, into a stranger in my own home. There I was, 56 years old, an entire life dedicated to the man standing in front of me, and he was kicking me out of my home, for his mother-in-law, for his wife's mother, for a woman he had barely known for 6 years. Danielle appeared in the hallway behind Robert. She was holding my granddaughter Sophia in her arms. The child was sleeping, oblivious to everything. Danielle didn't say a word. She just looked at me with that expression that said, "Don't make a scene. You have to understand." I opened my mouth. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to remind Robert who took care of him when he had pneumonia at age 5, who stayed up for weeks, who sold her gold earrings to pay for his college, who held his hand at his father's funeral when he was shaking with grief. But I didn't say anything. I kept silent. Because there are silences that weigh more than 1,000 words, and mine weighed 30 years of unconditional love that had just been thrown in the trash. I bent down. I picked up my suitcase from the floor. I was still wearing my travel clothes. I still smelled like the bus and exhaustion. I had driven 6 hours to get home, to come back to this. I gave my son one last look, at that man I no longer recognized, at that stranger with my Robert's face, but with the heart of someone I didn't know. And I left. I went down the stairs slowly, one by one. Each step was a memory. Here I carried him when he was learning to walk. Here he fell and scraped his knee. Here we would sit together eating popsicles on hot afternoons. I could hear Robert breathing heavily upstairs. I could feel his gaze, but I didn't turn around. If I looked at him one more time, if I saw that coldness in his eyes, I would collapse right there. I walked out the front door, the same door I had crossed thousands of times with grocery bags, the same one I crossed with newborn Robert, wrapped in a blue blanket, my heart overflowing with love and hope. I walked aimlessly through the streets of the town. My legs moved on their own. People greeted me. Mrs. Lucy from her window, Mr. Peter from his newspaper stand. I responded automatically, a fake smile painted on my face. I reached the town square. I sat down on a bench, the same one where I would sit with my husband on Sundays after church, the same one where I watched Robert while he played as a child, when he still called me Mommy, with that sweet voice that was now just a memory. I took my phone out of my purse. My fingers were trembling. I dialed a number I had saved for years. Mr. David Salazar, lawyer, a trusted friend of my late husband. Patricia? His voice sounded surprised when he recognized me. Mr. David? My voice was strangely calm. It was the calm that comes after total devastation, the calm in the eye of the hurricane. I need a legal notice, urgent. I have tenants in my property who need to vacate in 24 hours. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Patricia? His voice became cautious. Are we talking about your son and his family? Yes. Are you completely sure about what you're doing? I saw Robert's eyes again, full of rage, full of contempt. I heard that shout again. You can leave. I am completely sure. I'll stop by in 1 hour with the documents. Where are you? At the Colonial Hotel, room 203. I hung up. I stayed sitting on that bench, watching the afternoon fall over the town. The church bells rang 6 times. The square slowly filled with people leaving work, couples walking hand in hand, mothers with their children, complete families, and me there, alone, with a suitcase and a broken heart. Because what Robert didn't know, what none of them imagined, was that my silence was not weakness. It was not submission. It was not acceptance. It was the silence before the storm. And in the next 24 hours, my son was going to discover something he had apparently forgotten. That I wasn't just his mother. I was the owner of that house. The only owner. And that there are lines you don't cross, not even with the person who gave you life. But what happened when they received that notice was something none of us saw coming. The Colonial Hotel was a modest place, small, clean, nothing compared to my house. But at that moment, it was all I had. Room 203 smelled of lavender and loneliness. I sat down on the bed. I left the suitcase on the floor unopened. And for the first time since I left my house, the tears began to fall. I wasn't crying for myself. I was crying for what we had been, for what we had lost. Because there was a time, not so long ago, when Robert and I were inseparable. He was born on March 14th, after 18 hours of labour. My husband, Michael, never left my side for a second. When we finally heard that first cry, we both looked at each other and knew that our lives had just changed forever. Robert was a calm baby. He slept well. He ate well. He smiled easily. But above all, he was affectionate. From a very young age, he sought my arms. He would snuggle against my chest. He would caress my face with his chubby little hands. He's a mama's boy, Michael would say, laughing. And it was true. Robert and I had a bond that seemed unbreakable. I remember the afternoons after school. I would arrive tired from teaching all day, but Robert would be waiting at the window, As soon as he saw my car, he would run out. "Mummy, Mummy's home!" And he would launch himself into my arms as if he hadn't seen me in years, when it had only been 8 hours. Michael worked for a construction company. We didn't earn much, but it was enough. We lived in a small apartment in the city. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen where the 3 of us barely fit. But we were happy. "Someday," Michael would tell me, hugging me from behind while I cooked, "we're going to have our own house, with a yard, with space for Robert to run, with a big room for us." "Someday," I would repeat, smiling. That someday arrived when Robert was 8 years old. Michael had saved every penny for years. I had too. We saved in a cookie tin hidden in the closet. Coins, wrinkled bills, everything we could set aside after paying rent and groceries. We bought a piece of land on the outskirts of town. It wasn't big, but it was ours. Michael designed the house himself. A simple drawing on a napkin that later became blueprints. 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, a front yard. We built it little by little. On weekends, Michael and I would go to the land. He would lay bricks, I would mix cement. Robert would play among the half-finished walls, imagining what it would be like to live there. "This is going to be my room, right, Daddy?" he would ask, pointing to a corner. "Right here, champ." It took us 3 years to finish it. 3 years of hard work, blistered hands, aching backs. But the day we laid the last tile in the bathroom, the 3 of us hugged in the middle of the empty living room and cried tears of happiness. "It's ours," Michael said, "completely ours. Nobody can take it away from us." We moved in one afternoon in July. Robert was 11 years old. I remember him running through the whole house, screaming with excitement. He went up and down the stairs. He opened and closed the doors. He looked out every window. "It's huge, Mummy. It's the most beautiful house in the world." That night we ate dinner sitting on the living room floor because we didn't have any furniture yet. Hot dogs and fries that I bought from the local burger joint. The 3 of us in a circle, sharing, laughing. "Let's toast," Michael said, raising his soda. "To this house, to this family, to being together." We clinked our glasses. And at that moment, looking at my husband and my son, I thought there could be nothing more perfect than this. The years passed. Robert grew up. He became a teenager, then a young man, always responsible, always studious, always affectionate with me. When he was 17, Michael started feeling unwell, chest pains, tiredness. "It's the job," he would say. "I'm getting old." He was 52. One Sunday morning, while we were eating breakfast, Michael brought his hand to his chest. His face went grey. He collapsed from his chair before we could react. "Dad!" Robert screamed. We called the ambulance. It arrived in 15 minutes, but it wasn't enough. Michael died on the way to the hospital. A massive heart attack. Sudden. Without warning. My world fell apart. Robert, who was 17, became my support. He would hold me when I cried at night. He took care of the funeral arrangements. He would tell me, "It's okay, Mummy. I'm here. You're not alone." For months, I couldn't function. I would get up, go to work like an automaton, come back, and lock myself in my room. Robert cooked, cleaned, brought me tea. He would sit with me in silence when words weren't enough. "I'm never going to leave you, Mummy," he told me one night. I was in bed, looking at the ceiling. He sat down next to me and took my hand. "No matter what happens, I'll always be here for you. I promise." That promise sustained me through the darkest year of my life. Little by little, I began to heal. Robert entered college. He studied business administration. He got part-time jobs to help with expenses. He never complained. He never made me feel like a burden. "This house is yours, Mummy," he would tell me when I tried to give him money. "You and Dad built it for me. It's the least I can do." He graduated with honors. He got a good job in sales. And then he met Danielle. At first, I liked her. She was polite, pretty. She seemed to make Robert happy. They got married after 2 years of dating, a small but beautiful wedding. I cried with emotion watching my son at the altar. "Take care of him," I told Danielle privately. "He's a good man, the best." "I know," she replied, smiling. "I'm very lucky." They had Sophia the following year, my granddaughter, my joy. When I saw her for the first time, with her eyes closed and her little fists clenched, I felt like Michael was there with me, that somehow everything made sense. They were living in an apartment in the city, small, expensive. Danielle often complained about the space, the noise, the lack of green areas for the child. "Why don't you come live with me?" I told them one afternoon during a family dinner. "There's plenty of space. Sophia can have the yard. You can save money." Robert looked at me with those eyes full of gratitude that I knew so well. "Are you sure, Mummy?" "Completely. This house is too big for me alone. I miss having life here." They moved in 3 months later. At first, everything was perfect. I helped with Sophia. I cooked. I cleaned. I felt useful. I felt needed. But then she appeared, Mrs. Ellen, and everything started to change. At first, they were short visits, a weekend, then a week, then 2. She stayed longer each time. And each time, I felt like I was becoming invisible in my own house. Danielle started talking to me differently, with less respect, with less consideration. Robert stopped asking me how my day was. Sophia spent more time with her grandma Ellen than with me. But I kept silent, because I thought it was temporary, because I thought things would go back to how they were before. How wrong I was. And now, sitting in that hotel room, with tears falling onto my hands, I understood something terrible. I had lost my son long before that shout. I had lost him little by little, in silence, without realizing it. There was a knock on the door. It was Mr. David, with a manila envelope in his hand and a serious look on his face. "Patricia," he said, walking in, "are you absolutely sure about this?" I looked at him. I wiped my tears. More sure than I've ever been in my life. "Very well. Then let's sign this. And tomorrow, first thing in the morning, I'll deliver it personally." I signed every page without trembling, and with each signature, I felt something inside me hardening, growing stronger, because my son had forgotten something very important, something that I had taught him when he was little. Actions have consequences, and he was about to learn that lesson the hard way. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed sitting on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, reviewing every moment of the last few years, looking for signs, looking for the exact moment I lost my son. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up. I showered. I got dressed in the clothes I had in my suitcase. Black pants, a white blouse, nothing special. But I fixed my hair. I put on a little lipstick. I wanted to look dignified. I wanted to look strong, because I wasn't going to give them the pleasure of seeing me destroyed. Mr. David arrived at the hotel exactly at 8 o'clock. He brought the documents already prepared. A legal notice, formal, cold as my son's shout. "Do you want me to go alone?" he asked me. "Do you have to be present?" "No," I replied firmly. "I'm going with you. I want them to see my face when you hand this to them." We got into his car. The drive to my house was silent. Mr. David didn't ask questions. He just drove, looking at the road, giving me space to breathe. When we arrived, the sun was already high. It was a beautiful morning. The garden that Michael and I planted was full of flowers. The trees we planted when Robert was a child provided cool shade. Everything looked perfect from the outside. Nobody would imagine the war being waged inside. Mr. David knocked on the door. 3 firm knocks. Danielle opened it. She was holding Sophia. When she saw me, her face changed. Surprise. Then discomfort. "Patricia, we weren't expecting—" "Good morning, ma'am," Mr. David interrupted in a professional voice. "I am the lawyer, David Salazar. I am here to deliver a legal notice." Robert appeared behind Danielle. He was still wearing his pajamas. His hair was messy. When he saw me, his eyes hardened. "What is this, ma'am?" I didn't answer. I just stood there, behind Mr. David, with my back straight and my head held high. Mr. David extended the envelope. "It is an eviction notice. You have 24 hours to vacate this property." The silence that followed was absolute. Danielle turned pale. Robert took the envelope with trembling hands. He opened it. He started to read. I watched his face go from confusion to disbelief, and then to fury. "Is this serious?" His voice was trembling. "Are you kicking me out of the house?" "No," I replied calmly, a calm that surprised even me. "I am reminding you whose house this is." "But Mum!" "Don't call me Mum." The words came out cold, sharp. "Yesterday you yelled at me. You kicked me out. You told me to leave. So I left. And now you have to leave too." That was different. I didn't mean— "You didn't mean what, Robert? You didn't mean for me to leave? You didn't mean to say that if I didn't like it, I could get lost? Because that is exactly what you said." Danielle started crying. Sophia, confused by the atmosphere, also started to cry. "Patricia, please," Danielle pleaded. "There has to be another way. We can't leave in 24 hours. Where are we going to go with the child?" "You should have thought about that yesterday, when you gave my room to your mother, when you treated me like a stranger in my own house." Mrs. Ellen came down the stairs at that moment. She was wearing one of my bathrobes. She was in my house, wearing my clothes, sleeping in my bed. And she had the nerve to come down as if she were the owner. "What is going on here?" she asked in an annoyed voice. I looked her directly in the eyes. For the first time in all those months of visits, I held her gaze without looking away. "What is happening, Ma'am, is that you and my son and his family have 24 hours to leave my property." "What?" Her face twisted into a sneer of contempt. "How dare you? Robert, do something." "The notice is legal and binding," Mr. David intervened. "If you have not voluntarily vacated in 24 hours, we will proceed with a court order. And believe me, you do not want to reach that point." Robert looked at me as if he didn't recognize me, as if I were a monster. "I can't believe you're doing this, Mum. We're your family." "Exactly, Robert. We are family. Or we were. Until you treated me like I was less important than a stranger. Until you yelled at me in my own house. Until you chose her mother over yours. She needed help. And I was your mother." For the first time, my voice broke. "I was your mother, and you kicked me out like I was trash." Tears began to fall. But they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of rage, of pain, of 30 years of trampled love. "You traded me for her," I continued, pointing at Mrs. Ellen. "You gave her my room, my space, my place. And when I protested, you told me to leave. Well, I left. And now you are leaving too." Mr. David put a hand on my shoulder. "Patricia, let's go. Everything has been said." He was right. There was nothing more to say. I turned to leave. But before crossing the threshold, I turned one last time. 24 hours, I said. Not a minute more. We left. We got into the car. Mr. David started the engine. And as we drove away, I could see in the side mirror Robert standing at the door, the envelope in his hand, watching his mother drive away. Maybe he expected me to come back, to give in, to beg. He didn't know me at all, because I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to give in. For the first time in my life, I was going to set boundaries, even if it tore me apart inside. Mr. David dropped me off at the hotel. "Will you be all right?" he asked. "Yes," I lied. I went up to my room. I sat on the bed. And then, finally, I allowed myself to break down. I cried harder than I had cried since Michael died. I cried for everything I had lost, for everything that would never be again. But in the middle of that crying, something strange began to happen. My phone started ringing. It was Martha, my lifelong neighbor. "Patricia, sweetheart, what happened? I saw the lawyer leave your house. The whole town is talking." Of course, a small town, where everyone knows everything. "Martha," I said in a hoarse voice, "I don't want to talk about it right now." "It's okay, my dear, but I want you to know something. If you need somewhere to stay, my house is open. And if your son did something wrong to you, half the town is on your side." I hung up and the phone rang again. It was Carol from the bakery. Then Rose, my former colleague from school. Then Joe, the owner of the pharmacy. One after another, everyone asking, everyone offering help, everyone telling me I wasn't alone. And that's when I understood something. Robert thought I had no one, that I depended on him, that without him I would be lost. But he was wrong. I had lived in that town for 30 years. I had taught their children. I had attended their weddings and their funerals. I had been present in their lives. And now they were present in mine. What Robert didn't know, what he was about to discover, was that his mother was not alone, and that the 24 hours I had given him were going to be the longest of his life, because what he didn't imagine was that the whole town had seen how he treated his mother. And in a small town, those things are not easily forgiven. I'd like to know something. Where are you listening from? Have you been through something similar? Because believe me, what comes next is something none of us expected. The next few hours were the strangest of my life. I stayed in that hotel room watching the phone. Call after call, message after message. The entire town had found out. And everyone, absolutely everyone, wanted to know what had happened. But there was something else, something I didn't expect. Everyone was on my side. "That boy has no shame," Mrs. Lucy told me over the phone. "Kicking out his own mother after everything you did for him. My husband and I saw when you were building that house. We saw you break your back mixing cement. We saw how your husband, rest in peace, laid brick after brick. That house is yours. Period." Thank you, Lucy. It was all I could say. But the calls didn't stop. Mr. Peter from the newspaper stand called to tell me that if I needed a witness for anything, he was there. "I saw you raise that child, Patricia, with so much love, with so much sacrifice. What he did to you is unforgivable." Rose, my former colleague, arrived at the hotel with a suitcase full of clothes. "Here," she said. "I know you only brought what you took for the trip. Here's everything. And don't tell me no. We've been friends for 20 years. Carol, from the bakery, sent me a box full of donuts and a thermos of coffee. So you don't go without eating, sweetheart. And if you need money, just tell me." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to process so much kindness, so much solidarity. All my life I had focused on being a good mother, a good wife, a good teacher. But I had never stopped to see everything I had built beyond my family. All the relationships, all the connections, all the people who appreciated me. And now, when I needed it most, they were there. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon when my phone rang with a number I recognized immediately. Robert. My heart skipped a beat. I hesitated. I didn't know whether to answer, but something inside me needed to hear his voice. I needed to know what he was going to say. I answered. Mum. His voice sounded different, softer, almost pleading. Mum, we need to talk. Hello, Robert. Please, Mum, this is crazy. You can't just kick us out like this. We're your family. Yesterday you kicked me out. I didn't. I didn't mean that. I was angry, frustrated. Danielle was very upset about her mum and I lost my head. But it wasn't serious. I remained silent. I let his words hang in the air. Mum, please, talk to me. It wasn't serious, I repeated slowly. You yelled at me, you humiliated me, you kicked me out of my own house. And it wasn't serious. Mum, Do you know how that feels, Robert? Do you know how it feels for your own son? The son you carried in your arms, the son you taught to walk, the son you sold your things for so he could go to school, to look at you with contempt and tell you to leave? I'm sorry, I really am sorry. You're sorry. Or you're sorry that now you have to find somewhere to live in less than 24 hours. I heard him breathing on the other end. Deep breaths. He was crying. Mum, we have nowhere to go. The apartment we had has already been rented out. We can't afford a hotel with the child. Danielle is desperate. Her mother has a heart condition, and the stress is killing her. There it was. The excuse. There was always an excuse when it came to Mrs. Ellen. And what about my heart, Robert? What about my health? What about my stress? Or does that not matter because I'm your mother and I'm supposed to put up with everything? That's not it, Mum. You know I love you. I don't know that, Robert. Yesterday it didn't look like it. Yesterday it looked like you loved your mother-in-law more than your own mother. She's going through a very deep depression. Her husband left her 2 months ago. She's devastated. Danielle is her only daughter and they only have us. For the first time, something inside me wavered. Depression, abandonment, pain. I knew that pain. I had lived it when Michael died. I knew what it felt like to have the world fall apart. But then I remembered something. Robert, when your father died, do you remember who was there for me? Silence. It was you. You supported me. You took care of me. You told me you would never leave me, and I believed you. I trusted you. And now, when someone else needs you, you discard me as if I didn't matter. It's not the same, Mum. You're right. It's not the same. Because I never asked you to kick anyone out of their own house. I never asked you to give my place to another person. I never yelled at you, telling you that if you didn't like it, you could leave. I heard sobs on the other side. Mum, please give me a chance. Let me fix this. We can talk. We can find a solution. You had your chance, Robert. And you wasted it when you yelled at me in front of that woman. When you defended your mother-in-law before your mother. Mum, 24 hours. That's all you have. I hung up. My hands were trembling. My heart was pounding. Tears were falling again. Because a part of me wanted to give in, wanted to say, it's okay. Come back. Let's forget all this. I wanted to go back to being the mother who forgives everything, who puts up with everything, who sacrifices everything. But another part of me, a part that had been asleep for too long, was telling me, no, enough is enough. You have to set boundaries. And that second voice was stronger. I got up from the bed. I washed my face. I took a deep breath. And then my phone rang again. It was an unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Patricia Miller? It was a woman's voice, young, professional. Yes, that's me. I'm calling from the local newspaper. We received information that you are in a legal conflict with your son. We would like to interview you. My blood ran cold. What? How did you know that? Ma'am, this is a small town. News travels fast, especially when it involves well-known people like you. You were an elementary school teacher for 30 years. You taught half the town. People talk. I have no comment, I said quickly. I understand it's a difficult time, but the community has a right to know. There are many elderly people in similar situations. Your story could help to... I hung up. My head was spinning. The newspaper, an interview. This was getting out of control. But I didn't have time to process it because someone knocked on my room door. I opened it cautiously. It was Martha, my neighbor. But she wasn't alone. Behind her were Rose, Carol, Mr. Peter, Mrs. Lucy, and at least 10 more people from the town. Patricia, Martha said, taking my hands. We came to talk to you. I let them in, the room filled with people. Some sat on the bed, others leaned against the walls. Everyone looked at me with a mix of concern and determination. We want you to know something, Mr. Peter began. What your son did to you is not right, and we are not going to stay quiet. What do you mean? I asked, confused. That if he and his family need anything from the town, they won't get it, Carol said firmly. My bakery won't sell to them. The pharmacy won't either. The market won't either. But you can't do that, I said, alarmed. There's a child, my granddaughter. The child is not at fault, Rose intervened. But your son needs to learn that actions have consequences, that he can't treat his mother like that and expect everything to stay the same. Besides, Mrs. Lucy added, we want you to know that you can stay at my house. I have an extra room. You don't need to be in a hotel. And I can help you with the legal expenses if this drags on, Mr. Peter said. I have savings. I was speechless. I looked at all those people who had taken the trouble to come, who were willing to support me, to fight for me. I don't know what to say, I whispered. I didn't expect this. Well, you should have, Martha said, hugging me. Patricia, you've been there for all of us for years. When my son had trouble in school, you stayed after classes to help him. When Carol's husband died, you were the first one to knock on her door with food. When Mr. Peter got sick, you organized a collection. You have given so much. It's time for you to receive. The tears returned. But this time they were different. They weren't tears of pain. They were tears of gratitude, of surprise, of something I hadn't felt in a long time, feeling valued. Thank you, I managed to say. Thank you all. They stayed for a while longer. We talked. We drank coffee that Carol had brought. For the first time in days, I smiled. I even laughed. When they finally left, I was left alone in the room, but I no longer felt alone. I sat down on the bed and looked at my phone. I had 3 missed calls from Robert, 2 messages from Danielle, 1 from a number I didn't recognize. I opened the message from the unknown number. Mrs. Patricia, I'm Mary. I was your student 15 years ago. I heard about what happened with your son. I want you to know that if you need a place to stay, my husband and I have an available apartment. No cost. It's the least I can do for the teacher who taught me to read, the one who told me I could be someone in life. Please let me know if you need anything. I read the message 3 times. and each time I felt something inside me getting stronger, because I had believed that without Robert, without my son, I would be lost. I had believed that he was all I had. But I was wrong. I had much more than I imagined. I had an entire town that knew me, that respected me, that was willing to stand by me. And Robert was about to discover it, because the next few hours were going to be decisive. And what happened when the 24-hour deadline was reached was something that changed everything, forever. That night in the hotel was endless. I lay down early, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Robert's face, his pleading look on the phone, his sobs, and a part of me, that maternal part that never dies, wanted to run to hug him. I wanted to tell him that everything would be all right. But another part, the part that still felt the sting of his words, kept me firm. At Luk Haizo Hongfoot in the morning, my phone vibrated. A message from Danielle. Patricia, please reconsider. Think about Sophia. She's your granddaughter. Are you really going to do this? Are you going to leave us on the street? My fingers trembled over the keyboard. I was about to answer, about to give in. But then another message arrived, this time from an unknown number. Mrs. Patricia, I'm Monica, the next-door neighbor. I need to tell you something important. Can we talk early tomorrow? It's about your daughter-in-law and Mrs. Ellen. There are things you should know. I sat up in bed. My heart was pounding. What things? What did Monica know? I responded immediately. Sure. What time? Is Luke Spesum Zio Hongfoot in the morning okay? I can swing by your hotel. Perfect. I'll be here. I couldn't sleep after that. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what Monica had to tell me. At Luke Sex, Geo 30 foot, I was already dressed. At 5 minutes to 7, I went down to the hotel lobby. Monica arrived right on time. She carried a folder under her arm and a serious look on her face. Good morning, Mrs. Patricia. She greeted me. Can we speak in private? We went up to my room. Monica sat in the only available chair. I sat on the bed, facing her. Before I start, she said, I want you to know that I hesitated a lot about whether I should tell you this. I don't like getting involved in other people's lives. But what's happening isn't fair, and you deserve to know the truth. What truth? I asked, my stomach in knots. Monica opened the folder. She pulled out several printed pages. They were photographs, screenshots of WhatsApp conversations. My daughter Clara is friends with Danielle on social media, she began. They are not close friends, but they follow each other. About a month ago, Clara noticed something strange. Danielle started posting things about how difficult it is to live with mothers-in-law. Memes, quotes, things like that. She showed me the first screenshot. It was a Facebook post by Danielle. The text read, Mothers-in-law always think the house is theirs, even when they live off your charity. I felt a stab in my chest. There's more, Monica continued, handing me another page. This is from 3 weeks ago. It was another post. Tired of my husband prioritizing his mom over his own family. It's time for him to grow up and understand who his real family is now. My hands were trembling, holding the paper. Patricia, Monica said softly, your daughter-in-law has been speaking ill of you on social media for months. My daughter showed me all this because she found it awful. And when I found out what happened, I knew I had to tell you. Does Robert know about this? I asked in a hoarse voice. I don't know, but there's something else you should know. She handed me another page. This time it was a screenshot of a private conversation between Danielle and someone named Andrea. I read the text. Danielle, I can't stand living here anymore. Patricia is into everything. She meddles in how I raise Sophia, in how I cook, in everything. Andrea. And what does your husband say? Danielle. He's a lost cause. He won't leave his mum's side. But my mum gave me an idea. If she moves in here for a while, Patricia is going to feel uncomfortable. She'll want to leave. And when she leaves, this house is ours. Andrea. And what if she doesn't leave? Danielle. She'll leave. Robert will have to choose. And I know he'll choose me. The date of that conversation was from 2 months ago, just when Mrs. Ellen started making longer visits. This was planned, I whispered. It was all planned. It seems so, Monica confirmed. Danielle and her mother wanted to get you out of the house, and they succeeded. I remained silent, processing. Everything made sense now, Mrs. Ellen's increasingly long visits, the passive-aggressive comments, the way Danielle stopped asking for my opinion on things, how Robert slowly distanced himself from me. It hadn't been a coincidence. It had been a plan. Why? I asked out loud. Why do all this? My daughter says Danielle has always been very jealous, Monica explained. Jealous of the relationship between Robert and you. She felt that you had too much influence over him. And the house, well, the house is worth a lot of money. If you left, they could stay here, live without paying, eventually maybe convince Robert to put the house in their name. A dull rage began to grow inside me. It wasn't just rage against Danielle or Mrs. Ellen. It was rage against myself, for having been so blind, for not having seen the signs. There's one last thing, Monica said, pulling out another paper. This is from 3 days ago, before you left on your trip. It was another conversation. Danielle. Patricia is leaving for a week. It's the perfect opportunity. Andrea. For what? Danielle. For my mum to take her room. When she returns and sees my mum there, she'll get angry. She'll make a huge scene. And Robert will have to choose. And when he chooses wrong, Patricia will leave on her own, without us having to kick her out. She'll just go. Andrea. And what if Robert chooses his mother? Danielle. He won't. I've been working on his mind for months. He's already convinced that his mum is controlling, that she doesn't let us live our lives. He's going to choose me. I know it. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. I felt like I was going to explode. I'm so sorry, Patricia, Monica said, standing up. I know this must hurt, but I thought you had the right to know the truth. My daughter made these printouts for you, just in case you need them. She left the folder, she gave me a hug, and she left. I was left alone in that room, with those papers in my hands, feeling my world being reconstructed with a new truth. My son hadn't suddenly changed. He had been manipulated, slowly, systematically, for months. Danielle had planted doubts in his mind. She had painted a picture of me as an intrusive mother-in-law. She had waited for the perfect moment to execute her plan. And I had fallen right into the trap, because by leaving, by kicking them out, I was giving them exactly what Danielle wanted from the beginning, for me to disappear from Robert's life. I looked at the clock. It was Luke San Gio 0 foot in the morning. The deadline was at Luke 12 and Gio 0 foot in the afternoon. 4 hours. I picked up my phone. I called Mr. David. Mr. David, I need you to come to the hotel. Now. There's something you have to see. He arrived in 20 minutes. I showed him everything. Every screenshot, every conversation, every post. His face grew more serious with each page. This is manipulation, he finally said. Parental alienation. Danielle has been working to destroy your relationship with your son. What can I do? Well, this changes things. With this evidence, we can prove premeditation, that they planned to get you out of your house. We could even— No, I interrupted him. I don't want lawsuits. I don't want legal battles that drag on for years. Then what do you want? I thought for a moment, looking at those papers, looking at the truth written in black and white. I want my son to know the truth, I finally said. I want him to know what his wife did, what she planned, and after that, he can decide what to do. Are you sure? Once he knows this, there's no turning back. His marriage is already broken, Mr. David. It's built on lies and manipulation. He just needs to see it. Very well. Do you want me to be present when you tell him? Yes, but not today. Today is the deadline. Today they leave the house. And tomorrow we are going to have a conversation that will change everything. Mr. David nodded. He left with a copy of all the evidence. For security, he said. I was left alone again. I looked at the papers scattered on the bed. All those words, all those lies that Danielle had woven. And I felt something strange. It wasn't just pain anymore. It wasn't just rage. It was clarity. Because now I understood that the fight wasn't with me. It had never been with me. It was with the idea of me, with the image that Danielle had constructed in Robert's mind. And that meant that my son, my real son, was still in there, buried under months of manipulation. But he was there. I could still save him. But first, I had to let the 24 hours run out. I had to let them feel the weight of their actions. At Luke 11, Geo 0 foot in the morning, I dressed carefully. I put on a blue dress that Michael had given me years ago. I fixed my hair. I put on light makeup. I wanted to look dignified, strong, unbreakable, because at Luke 12 Geo 0 foot in the afternoon I was going back to my house. And what I found there would determine everything that would come next. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that Danielle had one last card up her sleeve. Something that even I hadn't anticipated. And what was about to happen was going to put everything I thought I knew about my son to the test. At 11:45, I left the hotel. Mr. David was waiting for me in his car. He had insisted on accompanying me. Just in case things get difficult, he said. The drive to my house was silent. I looked out the window, watching the familiar streets pass by. The park where Robert played as a child. The church where Michael and I got married. The school where I taught for 3 decades. Everything looked the same. But I was no longer the same. When we arrived at my house, there were several cars parked outside. I recognized some. Danielle's friends, Mrs. Ellen's family. They brought reinforcements, Mr. David murmured. We got out of the car. It was exactly Luke to 12, Joey 0 foot in the afternoon. The deadline had ended. I knocked on the door, my own door, because I didn't have the key anymore. I had left it on the table when I left. Danielle opened it. Her eyes were swollen from crying. But when she saw me, her expression changed. It was no longer sadness. It was defiance. You arrived, she said with a cold voice. The deadline is up, I replied with the same coldness. I hope you have everything ready. Come in. She stepped aside. I entered my house, and what I saw took my breath away. The living room was full of people, at least 15 people, all of them looking at me as if I were the monster. Among them was Mrs. Ellen, sitting in my favourite armchair, with Sophia in her arms. The child was sleeping, oblivious to everything. Robert was standing by the window. He didn't look at me. He kept his eyes fixed on the floor. Well, Mr. David said firmly. The legal deadline has ended. I hope you are ready to vacate the property. A woman I didn't know stood up. She was young, maybe in her 30s. She carried a briefcase. I am the lawyer Jessica Brown, she introduced herself. I represent the Jones family. My heart skipped a beat. Had Robert hired a lawyer? What does this mean? Mr. David asked. It means, the lawyer said with a professional smile, that my client has rights to this property, and we are going to challenge the eviction notice. Rights? I repeated, incredulous. What rights? It was then that Danielle pulled some papers out of her purse. She handed them to me with a triumphant expression. These rights. I took them with trembling hands. They were notarized documents, contracts. I read them quickly, unable to believe my eyes. It was a deed of gift, dated 3 years ago, when Robert and Danielle moved into my house. According to the document, I had ceded the use of the property to them indefinitely, with all maintenance obligations in their charge, and with a clause that said I could not revoke the contract without just cause and with 90 days' notice. This is false, I said with a trembling voice. I never signed this. Your signature is right there, Danielle pointed out. And indeed, it was there. My signature. On every page. I don't remember signing this. You signed it, Mrs. Ellen intervened with a sweet but venomous voice. 3 years ago, when Robert and Danielle moved in. Don't you remember? Danielle said it was so they could have something official, to feel secure. And you signed because you wanted your son to be happy. Memories started to come back. Fuzzy, fragmented. Yes. Yes, I had signed some papers 3 years ago, but Danielle had said they were bank forms to add Robert as a beneficiary to my account in case something happened to me. They tricked me, I whispered. They made me sign this without telling me what it was. You'll have to prove that, Danielle's lawyer said. But in the meantime, this contract is valid. And by law, you cannot evict them without 90 days prior notice. Mr. David took the papers. He quickly reviewed them. His face grew increasingly serious. Patricia, he said in a low voice, this is notarized. It has all the legal stamps. It's valid. I felt my legs give out. I had to lean against the wall. It can't be, I said. It can't be. Oh, but it is, Danielle said, crossing her arms. So I regret to inform you that your 24-hour notice is worthless. You can't kick us out. This house is as much ours as it is yours. I looked at Robert. He still wouldn't look at me. His hands were in his pockets and his jaw was clenched. Robert, I said with a broken voice, did you know about this? He finally looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something that destroyed me. Guilt. Danielle told me it was just for security, he said weakly, that if something ever happened to you, we would have somewhere to live. I didn't know she was going to… Going to what? Danielle interrupted him. Going to use our legal rights when your mother kicked us out of our house for no reason? I kicked you out because you kicked me out first, I shouted. I couldn't contain the rage anymore. Because you yelled at me. Because you made me feel like a stranger in my own house. You're the one who exaggerates everything, Danielle replied with contempt. We asked you a favor, a simple favor, to let my mum use your room for a few days. And you made a giant drama. As always. As always, I repeated, incredulous. Yes, as always. You're always the victim, always the martyr. Everything is always about you. Poor Patricia, poor mother-in-law. You never think about anyone else. Every word was a blow, every sentence a stab. Danielle, enough, Robert said weakly. Enough. Seriously, Robert, Danielle turned on him. Your mother kicked us out. She humiliated us in front of the whole town. She made us look like bad people. And you're still defending her. I'm not defending her. I'm just saying that you always defend her. Danielle was screaming now. It's always her. Always your mummy. When are you going to understand that I am your family now? Me and Sophia, not her. The silence that followed was absolute. I looked at the people in the room. They were all watching as if this were a show, as if my pain were entertainment. And then I looked at my son, at that man I no longer recognized, who was standing there, saying nothing, while his wife destroyed me. Aren't you going to say anything? I asked him directly. Are you going to let her talk to me like that? Robert opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked down again, and that silence was the clearest answer he could have given me. Very well, I said. My voice sounded strangely calm. You're right. The contract is legal. I cannot kick you out in 24 hours. I watched Danielle smile with satisfaction. But, I continued, I can do other things. This house has my name on it. Only my name. I can cut off the utilities. I can stop paying for the water, the electricity, the gas. I can make you live here very uncomfortably for those 90 days. Danielle's smile disappeared. You wouldn't dare, she said. Try me. Mr. David touched my shoulder. Patricia, it's not a good idea. They could sue you for… I don't care, I interrupted him. If they are going to use legal tricks, I can too. If they are going to play dirty, I can play dirtier. It was then that Robert finally spoke, in a louder voice than he had spoken all day. Enough! Both of you! Everybody turned to look at him. Mum, Danielle, both of you stop. This is out of control. We are destroying this family over a house, over a room, over pride. It's not about pride, I said with a trembling voice. It's about respect, about dignity, about not being treated like trash in my own house. And you don't understand, he said to Danielle, that this woman raised me, gave me everything. You can't ask me to treat her like she doesn't matter. And what about me? Danielle replied with tears in her eyes. Don't I matter? Doesn't my mum matter? Does only she matter? Robert ran his hands through his face. He looked exhausted, destroyed. I don't know what to do, he finally said. I don't know how to fix this. And at that moment, I pulled out the folder I had been keeping in my purse, the folder that Monica had given me that morning. Maybe this will help, I said, placing the folder on the table. Maybe if you see this, you'll understand what's really going on. Danielle turned pale. What is that? Why don't you open it and find out? Robert approached the table, picked up the folder, opened it, and began to read. I watched his expression change, from confusion to surprise, from surprise to disbelief, from disbelief to horror. What is this, Danielle? He asked with a trembling voice. I can explain it. These are your conversations, your posts, talking badly about my mother, planning how to get her out of the house. His voice was getting louder. Is this real? Did you write this? Danielle didn't answer. She just looked at the floor. Answer me! Yes, she finally screamed. Yes, I wrote it. So what? Everything I said is true. Your mother is controlling. She was in everything. And yes, I wanted her to leave, because this house should be ours, not hers. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert dropped the folder. The papers scattered on the floor. All those words, all those lies, exposed for everyone to see. You manipulated me, Robert said almost in a whisper. For months, you made me believe that my mother was the problem. that she was the one who didn't let us live. And all the time it was you. Robert, I just wanted what was best for us. The best. Destroying my relationship with my mother was the best. The people in the room began to murmur, to gather their things. Danielle's lawyer turned pale. I think it's time for me to go, she said, quickly putting away her papers. One by one, all the guests began to leave. Nobody wanted to be there. Nobody wanted to be part of what was coming. Until only we remained. Robert, Danielle, Mrs. Ellen, Mr. David, and I. Mrs. Ellen stood up, still with Sophia in her arms. Danielle, let's go, she said firmly. We don't have to stay here and put up with this. No, Robert said. No one is leaving. Not yet. Because this ends today. Here. Now. He turned to me, and for the first time in days, I saw my son, my real son, with his eyes full of tears and his heart shattered. Mom, he said with a broken voice, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. And what happened next was something none of us saw coming. Mum, I'm sorry. Those two words came out of Robert's mouth with so much pain that I felt something inside me break and heal at the same time. He took a step towards me, then another, and then, for the first time in days, my son hugged me. It wasn't a lukewarm hug. It wasn't an obligatory hug. It was the hug of a child who realizes he has hurt his mother, the hug of someone who has just woken up from a nightmare. I'm so sorry, he repeated between sobs. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I couldn't speak. I just hugged him back, feeling his tears wet my shoulder, feeling him tremble, feeling how, after so many days of darkness, there was finally a ray of light. Robert, Danielle's voice cut through the moment. Seriously? Are you really going to believe her? Those conversations are taken out of context. I was venting to a friend. Everyone talks badly about their mothers-in-law. Robert pulled away from me. He wiped his tears. He turned to his wife. No, Danielle. Not everyone plans for months to get their mother-in-law out of her own house. Not everyone manipulates their husband to see his mother as the enemy. I didn't manipulate you. I just opened your eyes. You opened my eyes, Robert's voice got louder. Or you blinded me. Because now that I read this, now that I see everything together, I realize things. How every time my mother said something, you said the opposite. How every time I wanted to spend time with her, you had some emergency. How little by little you pushed me away from her. Because she didn't let us live. Because you didn't want to share me, Robert shouted. You wanted me to choose between my mother and you, and I was so foolish that I fell for your game. Danielle started crying, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of fury, of rage at being discovered. Great. Now I'm the bad guy. Now everything is my fault. And what about your mother? She kicked us out. She humiliated us. She left us homeless. Because you put your mother to sleep in her bed, Robert replied. In her room, in her most intimate space. How did you expect her to react? I expected her to have empathy. My mother was suffering. And mine wasn't? Robert's voice broke again. Wasn't my mother suffering when I took her room? When I treated her like she didn't matter? When I yelled at her and told her to leave? He covered his face with his hands. His shoulders were trembling. Oh my God, he murmured. What have I done? What have I done to my mother? Mrs. Ellen, who had been silent until that moment, finally spoke. Robert, you have to understand. Danielle was just taking care of her family, of her mother. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong? Robert looked at her directly. There's nothing wrong with lying. with manipulating, with destroying the relationship between a mother and her son. I didn't destroy anything, Mrs. Ellen said coldly. Your mother did it all by herself with her attitude. My attitude? I spoke for the first time since the hug. My voice sounded stronger than I expected. What attitude? The one of opening the doors of my house? The one of taking care of my granddaughter? The one of cooking and cleaning and doing everything to make you comfortable? The one of sticking your nose where it doesn't belong? Mrs. Ellen replied venomously. The one of believing that this house is only yours when your son lives here? The one of not understanding that you are no longer the most important woman in his life? Those words hurt more than I wanted to admit. Ma'am, Mr. David intervened, I think it's time for you to leave. This is a family matter. I am family, Mrs. Ellen shouted. I am that child's grandmother. I have as much right to be here as she does. No, ma'am. Robert's voice was now firm, cold. You have no right to be here. This is my mother's house, and you are not welcome, Mrs. Gauss. Ellen looked at him as if he had slapped her. What did you say? That you have to leave. Now. You and your daughter used this house. You used all of us for your own benefit. And I was so blind that I didn't see it. Robert, you can't talk to my mother like that, Danielle said with a trembling voice. I can't. Why not? She talked to my mother like that. You talk to my mother like that. Why does my mother have to put up with it, but yours doesn't? Because my mother gave me life. She raised me alone. She went through a horrible divorce. She deserves respect. And mine doesn't, Robert was yelling again. My mother, who raised me with my father, who worked every day of her life to give me a home, who sold her things to pay for my college, who stayed with me when my father died and I broke down. Doesn't she deserve respect? The silence that followed was absolute. Danielle had no answer. Mrs. Ellen looked at the floor, and I could barely breathe, because after days of feeling invisible, of feeling like I didn't matter, my son was finally defending me. Robert, Danielle said in a softer, more manipulative voice, I know you're angry. I know things got out of control, but we can fix this. We can talk. We can… No, Robert shook his head. We can't, because I don't trust you anymore. The words fell like stones. What? What do you mean? I mean you lied. For months you made me doubt my mother. You made me believe that she was the problem, and now I see that the problem was you, and I don't know if I can forgive that. Danielle turned pale. Robert, I'm your wife. We have a daughter. I know, believe me, I know. And that's why what you did is so serious. Because you didn't just hurt me. You hurt our family. You destroyed Sophia's relationship with her paternal grandmother. All for what? To have this house? To make your mother feel important? My mother needed help. And my mother too. Robert ran his hands through his hair. He was on the verge of collapse. Don't you understand? My mother lost her husband 8 years ago. She lives alone. She opened her house to us because she loved us, because she wanted to have us close. And I, treated her like a nuisance. He turned to me. His eyes were red, his face swollen from crying. Mum, he said with a broken voice, there are no words to tell you how sorry I am. I have been the worst son in the world. I failed you. I hurt you in the most horrible way. And the worst thing is that there's nothing I can do to fix it. Robert, no. Let me finish. I need to say this. He took a deep breath. When Dad died, I promised you I would never leave you, that I would always be there for you. And I broke that promise in the worst possible way. I didn't just leave you, I kicked you out of your own house. as if you were the stranger, as if you were the problem. Tears were falling freely down his face now. And all this time I spent justifying Danielle, defending Mrs. Ellen, moving away from you. Dad must be turning over in his grave. Because he loved you, he adored you, and he taught me to do the same. And I forgot. I forgot everything he taught me. My own heart was shattered. Because seeing my son like this, so broken, so remorseful, hurt more than any insult, more than any shout. "Robert," I managed to say with a trembling voice, "your father would be proud that you finally opened your eyes, that you recognized your mistake. That is what he taught you, to be a good man, to admit when you're wrong." "But it's too late, isn't it?" Robert laughed without joy. "I've hurt you too much. I've damaged our relationship beyond repair." "It's not too late," I said firmly. "It's never too late for a mother to forgive her son." Do you forgive me?" His voice was like a small child's, vulnerable, hopeful. "I forgive you," I said without hesitation. "I will always forgive you because you are my son, and a mother's love has no limits." Danielle let out a sound of frustration. "This is ridiculous, Robert. Seriously. Are you going to believe everything she says? Are you going to forget everything your mother did? How she kicked us out? How she humiliated us?" "She had the right," Robert replied without looking at her. "She had every right, because it was her house, her space, and we abused her kindness. It wasn't us. It was your mother who exaggerated everything." "Stop!" Robert's shout made us all jump. Even Sophia woke up in Mrs. Ellen's arms and started crying. Robert walked over to Mrs. Ellen and took his daughter in his arms. He gently rocked her until the child calmed down. "Listen to me carefully," he said in a firm but controlled voice. "This farce ends today. Danielle, you and your mother are leaving this house now. You are going to find a place to stay, a hotel, an apartment, whatever. But you are not going to be here." "And you?" Danielle asked with a trembling voice. Robert looked at Sophia. Then he looked at me, and I saw an internal struggle in his eyes, a war between his role as a husband and his role as a son. "I'm going with you," he finally said, "because you are my wife, and Sophia is my daughter, and I need time to think, to understand all this, to decide what to do." The words hit me like a punch, because despite everything, despite having seen the truth, my son was still choosing to leave. But then he added something else. "But we are not going to live off your mother, Danielle. We are going to find our own place, with our own money. And you are going to seek help, therapy, because what you did is not normal. It's not healthy. And if we want to have any chance of this marriage working, you need to work on yourself." Danielle opened her mouth to protest, but Robert raised his hand. "It's not negotiable. Either you seek help or this ends, and you will lose your family, me, Sophia, everything." Danielle closed her mouth. She nodded slowly. Tears were falling down her face, but they were no longer tears of manipulation. They were tears of fear, real fear of losing what she had. "And one more thing," Robert continued. "This deed of gift, we are going to cancel it. I don't know how, but we are going to cancel it, because it was obtained through deception, and this house is completely my mother's again, as it always should have been." Mr. David nodded. "We can prove the deception, with witnesses, with evidence. It won't be easy, but it can be done." Robert walked over to me, with Sophia in his arms. My granddaughter was sleeping again, oblivious to all the drama unfolding around her. "Mum," Robert said, "I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know I hurt you in unforgivable ways, but I ask you one thing. Just one. What thing? Don't take Sophia away from your life. She loves you, she needs you, and even though I don't deserve your forgiveness, she is not at fault for any of this. I looked at my granddaughter, that beautiful child who looked so much like her grandfather, that innocent creature who had been used as a weapon in a war she didn't ask for. I would never take her away, I said, gently touching her little head. She's my granddaughter. I love her. I will always love her. Thank you, Robert whispered. Thank you, Mum. He gave me a kiss on the forehead, long, full of love, full of regret, and then he turned around. Let's go, he said to Danielle. Pack what's necessary. We're leaving in 1 hour. The next hour was a whirlwind of activity. Danielle and Mrs. Ellen went upstairs to pack. Robert stayed in the living room with me, in silence, not knowing what to say. Mr. David put a hand on my shoulder. Are you all right? I nodded, although I wasn't sure if it was true, because I had won. I had recovered my house. I had exposed the truth. I had seen my son wake up from the manipulation. But I had also lost. Because my son was leaving, my granddaughter was leaving, and I didn't know when I would see them again. When they finally came down with their suitcases, I stood in the doorway, watching them load the car, watching my family fall apart. Robert was the last to leave. He stopped in front of me. I'll call you, he promised. Every day. And we're going to fix this, somehow. I promise you. It's okay, I said, although my heart was broken. I love you, Mum. I love you too, son. He left. The car started, drove away down the street, and I stood there, rooted to the threshold of my empty house, feeling all the weight of the last few days fall upon me. Mr. David stayed with me. He didn't say anything. He was just there. Because sometimes someone's presence is worth more than 1,000 words. I walked into my house, my empty house, my silent house, the house I had fought so hard to reclaim. And I sat in the living room armchair, the same armchair where I had sat with Michael thousands of times, the same armchair where I cradled Robert when he was a baby. And I cried. I cried for everything I had lost, for everything I had gained, for everything that would never be the same again. But in the middle of that crying, I felt something else. Peace. Because I had recovered my dignity. I had set boundaries. I had defended my space. I had shown that I had value beyond being a mother. And that in some strange way was enough. At least for now. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that this was not the last battle. It was just the first. The first 3 days after they left were the hardest of my life. The house was silent, a silence that was different from the silence before. Before it was a quiet, peaceful silence. The silence of a woman who lives alone, but is at peace. This was a heavy, painful silence. The silence of a house that had been the scene of a war. I walked through the rooms and saw ghosts. In the kitchen, I saw Robert as a child, sitting at the table doing his homework while I cooked dinner. In the living room, I saw Michael reading the newspaper, his glasses on the tip of his nose. In the yard, I saw Sophia running among the flowers, laughing. All ghosts, all memories. Mr. David came by every day. He brought me food. You have to eat, Patricia, he would say. And I would nod, even though the food had no taste. Even though every bite felt like swallowing stones. Martha, Rose, Carol, all my friends from town came too. They kept me company. They talked to me. They tried to make me laugh. And I appreciated their effort. I really did. But there was a void inside me that no one could fill. The void of my son. Robert called, as he had promised, every day at Lukbezo Hongfoot in the evening. Short, uncomfortable conversations, full of long silences. How are you, Mum? Fine. And you? Fine. Sophia sends you a kiss. Give her one from me. I will. I love you, Mum. I love you too, son. And we would hang up. And I would stare at the phone, feeling how every call was a reminder of everything we had lost. It was on the fourth night when something changed. I was sitting in my bed, in my room that I had finally reclaimed, looking at the photos on my nightstand. Photos of Michael, of baby Robert, of the three of us together. And then my phone rang. It wasn't Robert's calling time. It was Luke chapter 11, Geo 0 foot at night. I answered, alarmed. Hello? Patricia. It was Robert's voice, but it sounded different, broken, scared. I need to talk to you. Can you come over, please? My heart raced. What happened? Is Sophia okay? Sophia is fine, but I need my mum. I didn't ask questions. I got dressed in 5 minutes. I took the car keys that I had stopped using since I went to the hotel, and I drove to the address Robert had sent me in a message, a small apartment in the center of town. I knocked on the door. Robert opened it immediately. His eyes were red. His hair was messy. He looked shattered. What happened? I asked, walking in. The apartment was small. 2 bedrooms, a living room, dining room, everything very austere, very different from my spacious house. Danielle left, Robert said with a trembling voice. She took Sophia to her mother's house. She says she needs space to think. I sat on the sofa, processing. When? 2 hours ago. We had an argument. I told her I needed her to be honest with me, to tell me the truth about everything. And she exploded. She said she was tired, that she couldn't take it anymore, that if I was going to keep defending you, then she was leaving. Robert slumped onto the sofa next to me. He covered his face with his hands. And I let her go, Mom. I didn't stop her, because I realized something. Realized what? That I don't know who she is. I've been married to her for 6 years. We have a daughter, and I don't really know who she is, because all this time, everything I thought I knew about her was a lie. I remained silent, letting him talk. She told me she loved you, that she respected you, that she was grateful for everything you did for us. And I believed her, because I wanted to believe, because she was my wife, because she was my daughter's mother. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. But now I see that everything was an act. Everything was manipulation. And the worst thing is that I allowed it. I was so easy to deceive. It wasn't your fault, I said softly. It wasn't? He looked at me with eyes full of pain. I chose to believe her over you. I chose to doubt you. My own mother, the woman who raised me, who loved me unconditionally, and I doubted you for a woman who was using me. Robert. No, Mum. Let me finish. I need to say this. He took a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot these days, going over everything, and I've realized things. How Danielle always found a way to make me doubt you. How she always planted small doubts, subtle comments, things that seemed innocent at the time, but that accumulated over time. I nodded, because I had also seen those comments, those small stabs disguised as casual observations. And the saddest thing, Robert continued, is that it worked. Little by little, without realizing it, I started to see you differently. To see you as Danielle wanted me to see you, as an intrusive mother-in-law, as someone who wouldn't let us live our lives. And now, I asked, How do you see me now? He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Clarity. Now I see you as what you've always been. My mother, the strongest woman I know, the one who broke her back building that house, the one who worked every day of her life to give me a future, the one who supported me when Dad died, and I thought I couldn't go on. Tears began to fall down my face. And I'm ashamed, he said with a broken voice. I'm ashamed that I allowed someone to make me doubt you. I'm ashamed that I was so weak. You're not weak, I told him. You were manipulated. There's a difference. Is there? Yes, because a weak man doesn't recognize his mistakes. A weak man doesn't ask for forgiveness. A weak man doesn't call his mother at Luke 11. Geo 0 foot at night because he needs her. You did all that. That's not weakness, that's strength. We stayed like that for a while, hugging, crying together, healing together. Finally, Robert pulled away. He wiped his tears. I need to ask you something, he said. And I need you to be honest with me. I always am. Do you think I can save my marriage? The question took me by surprise, because I didn't know what to answer. I didn't know whether to answer with my heart or with reason. Do you want to save it? I asked instead. Robert thought for a long time. I don't know, he finally admitted. Part of me does, for Sophia, because I don't want her to grow up in a broken home, because I don't want to be the father who only sees her on weekends. He paused. But another part of me doesn't trust Danielle anymore. And I don't know if I can live like that, without trust, always wondering if she's manipulating me, always doubting her words. And what does she say? I asked. Does she want to save the marriage? She says yes, but only if I stop prioritizing you. Those were her words. If I stop prioritizing you. I felt a pang in my chest. And what did you tell her? I told her that you are my mother, that you will always be important to me, and that if she can't accept that, then I don't know if we have a future. Robert? No, Mum. Enough is enough. Enough of having to choose. Enough of feeling like I have to choose between my mother and my wife. That's not love. That's manipulation. He was right, and I was glad he finally saw it. But something inside me felt pity for Danielle, because I understood, in some twisted way, why she had done what she did. Can I tell you something? I asked. Something you might not want to hear. Sure. I think Danielle was afraid. Robert looked at me, confused. Afraid of what? Afraid of losing you. Afraid of not being enough. Afraid that your love for me was stronger than your love for her. But that's ridiculous. I love her. I chose her. I married her. I know, but fear is not rational. And I think Danielle grew up seeing how you and I had a close relationship. And instead of being happy about it, she felt threatened. She felt like she had to compete with me for your love. And instead of talking about that, instead of working on her insecurity, she decided to attack me. She decided to push me away. Robert was silent, processing. I'm not justifying what she did, I continued. What she did was wrong, very wrong. But I understand where it came from. I understand that fear can make people do terrible things. Why are you defending her? Robert asked. After everything she did to you. I'm not defending her. I'm just trying to understand her. Because I've learned something these past few days, son. I've learned that hurt people hurt others, that people who are afraid attack, and that sometimes the most difficult person is the one who needs love the most. Robert looked at me with admiration. How can you be so compassionate after everything? Because I'm your mother, and mothers learn to forgive. We learn to see beyond the pain, to understand that we are all human. We all make mistakes. We all deserve a second chance. Would you give Danielle a second chance? The question hit me, because I didn't know the answer. I wasn't sure if I could. I don't know, I said honestly. But I know that if you are going to try to save your marriage, you need help. Therapy. Someone to help you communicate. To rebuild trust. Because without help, you will only keep falling into the same patterns. Robert nodded slowly. You're right. You are absolutely right. He got up from the sofa. He walked towards the window. He looked outside, towards the lights of the town. Dad would tell me to fight for my family, he said softly. He would tell me that marriage is not easy, that it requires work, sacrifice. Your father would also tell you to respect me, I added, to make sure your wife treated me with dignity, because he never tolerated anyone disrespecting me. Robert smiled sadly. I miss him. I miss him so much. Me too, son. Me too. We were silent for a moment. What would you have done in my place? He finally asked. You two. You and Dad. I thought about it. About Michael. How we handled conflicts. How we loved each other even in difficult moments. Your father and I had a rule, I said. We would never go to sleep angry, no matter how big the fight was. We would stay awake until we resolved it, because we knew that every day we let pass, the resentment grew. Did you never fight about in-laws? Of course we did. Your maternal grandmother, my mum, and your father had their clashes. But Michael was always clear. He respected me. He respected my mother. But he didn't let anyone put poison in our relationship. And I did the same with his parents. And how did you manage it? Communication, honesty, and clear boundaries. Your father would tell me when something my mother did bothered him, and I would listen, because his opinion mattered. But I would also ask him to be fair, not to exaggerate, to understand that my mother came from a different time, from another generation. Robert sat down again. He looked calmer, more centered. Thank you, Mum, he said, for coming, for listening to me, for not judging me. I will always be here, son, always. I stayed with him until Luke 2, Geo 0 foot in the morning. We talked about everything, about his childhood, about Michael, about the mistakes we had both made, about how to rebuild what had been broken. When I finally left, I drove back home feeling something different in my chest. It was no longer just pain. It was no longer just rage. It was hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could heal from this. Not immediately, not without effort, but eventually. I arrived home, I went in, and for the first time in days, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. I sat on my bed. I looked at the photos on my nightstand, and I talked to Michael, as I sometimes did when I missed him too much. Our son is going to be okay, I said to his photo. He made mistakes, big mistakes, but he has your heart, and that means he's going to find his way back. And at that moment, my phone vibrated. A message from Robert. Thank you for tonight, Mum. I talked to Danielle. We're going to try therapy. I don't promise anything, but we're going to try. I love you. I smiled. For the first time in days, I truly smiled, because there was light at the end of the tunnel. Small, distant, but there, and sometimes that's all we need. A little light in the darkness. What none of us knew was that the road to that light was going to be much more complicated than we imagined, and that before everything ended, we were going to face a test that would challenge everything we had learned. But that night, in the peace of my room, I allowed myself to have hope, and that was enough. The following weeks were a slow process of healing. Robert and Danielle started therapy. I didn't ask much about it. It wasn't my place. But I noticed changes in my son. Small changes, good changes. He called more often. He came to visit me on Saturdays with Sophia. Danielle never came, but that was fine. We both needed distance. Mr. David was working on cancelling the deed of gift. It was a slow process, full of papers and bureaucracy. But we were making progress. The evidence of deception was clear. It was only a matter of time. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, I received an unexpected call. "Mrs. Patricia?" It was a woman's voice. I didn't recognize her. "Yes, that's me." "I'm Dr. Rodriguez. I am your son and daughter-in-law's therapist. Would you have time to come to a session? Danielle has asked to speak with you, with a mediator present." My heart raced. I didn't know if I was ready for that. But something inside me said yes. "When?" "Is this Friday at Luke 4 Geo 0 Foot in the afternoon, okay?" "I'll be there." Friday arrived too quickly. I dressed carefully. I wanted to look serene, strong. The therapist's office was cozy. Beige walls, calming pictures, a plant in the corner. Danielle was already there when I arrived. She looked different, thinner, paler. She had deep circles under her eyes. Robert was next to her. He gave me a hug when I walked in. "Thanks for coming, Mum," he whispered. Dr. Rodriguez seated us, me on one armchair, Danielle and Robert on another facing me. "Patricia," the doctor began, "Danielle has something she wants to tell you. I've asked her to be completely honest, without defenses, without excuses, just the truth." I looked at Danielle. She avoided my gaze. "Patricia," she finally said, with a trembling voice, I want to apologize." The words came out with difficulty, as if it hurt her to utter them. "I know what I did was horrible. I manipulated Robert. I treated you badly. I planned to get you out of your own house. And I did it all because—" She stopped. Tears began to fall. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" I asked softly. "Afraid of not being enough. That Robert loved you more than me. That I would always be the second option." She took a deep breath before continuing. "My mother divorced when I was 12 years old. My father left her for a younger woman. And for years, I watched my mum blame herself, how she said that she hadn't been enough, that if she had been a better wife, he wouldn't have left. And I grew up with that fear," she continued, "the fear of not being enough, of being replaced. And when I saw how close you were with Robert, instead of being happy about it, I saw it as a threat. I thought that if he needed you so much, it meant that I wasn't enough, that I couldn't fill that space in his life. And instead of talking about it, instead of working on my insecurity, I decided to attack you. I decided to push you away, because I thought that if you weren't around, he would need me more. But all I accomplished was hurting everyone, you, Robert, our family, and I almost destroyed my marriage because of my own fear." She wiped her tears with a tissue. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve it. But I needed to tell you that I'm sorry, that I regret every cruel word, every malicious plan, everything." The silence that followed was long. I looked at Danielle. I really looked at her. And I saw what I had been denying myself to see. A broken woman. A wounded woman. a woman who acted out of her pain. And your mother? I asked. Does she feel that way too? Danielle looked down. My mother. My mother is not going to apologize. She believes we did the right thing, that we defended our family. I see. But I am distancing myself from her. Dr. Rodriguez helped me to see that my mum projects her pain onto me, that she taught me to see mothers-in-law as enemies, because that's how she saw hers. And I don't want to follow that pattern. I'm proud of her, Robert intervened. I know this is difficult, confronting your own mother, but she's doing it. For us. For our family. I looked at my son. I saw the love in his eyes when he looked at Danielle. And I understood something. He had chosen, not between her and me. He had chosen to heal, chosen to grow, chosen to build something better. Danielle, I finally said, I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate you recognizing what you did. Do you forgive me? She asked hopefully. I'm working on it, I answered honestly. Forgiveness is not instantaneous, it's a process. But I promise you that I'm trying. For Robert, for Sophia, for all of us. Danielle nodded. It's more than I deserve. We all deserve forgiveness, I said. We all make mistakes. The difference is whether we recognize them and work to be better. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. This is a big step. For everyone. The session continued. We talked about boundaries, about expectations, about how to rebuild trust. At the end, as we were saying goodbye, Danielle approached me. Patricia, she said timidly, do you think someday we can, I don't know, have coffee? Get to know each other for real, without lies, without games? I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw potential. I saw the possibility of something new. Someday, I said, when we are both ready. She smiled, a small but genuine smile. Thank you. I drove back home feeling something strange in my chest. It wasn't complete happiness. There was still pain. There were still scars. But there was something else. Something I hadn't felt in weeks. Real hope. And that night, when Robert called me at Luke 7 Geo 0 Foot, as always, our conversation was different. How are you feeling, Mum? Tired, but good. And you? Relieved. Danielle has been working hard on herself. And I have too. We're learning to communicate. For real. I'm glad, son. Mum, there's something else I want to tell you. Tell me. We cancelled the contract. Mr. David succeeded. The house is completely yours again, without strings attached. I closed my eyes. I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. Thank you, I whispered. No, thank you, for not giving up, for fighting for what was yours, for teaching me that setting boundaries is not selfishness, it's self-love. We hung up, and I sat in my living room, in my house that was finally only mine again, feeling peace, because justice doesn't always come from the courts. Sometimes it comes from the simple act of the truth coming to light, from people recognizing their mistake, from love being stronger than pride. And although the path had been painful, although the scars would remain, I knew we had learned something valuable, that families can break, but they can also heal. And we were healing, slowly, painfully, but healing. What would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven? Or would the pain have been too great? Because what comes now is the most important part of this story, the final lesson. The legacy I want to leave. 6 months have passed since that afternoon when I found Mrs. Ellen sleeping in my bed. 6 months since my life changed forever. I am sitting in my yard, the same one that Michael and I planted so many years ago. It's a quiet Sunday afternoon. The sun is setting and paints the sky orange and pink. In my hands, I have a cup of coffee that is already cold, but I don't care. It's not for the coffee that I'm here. It's for the peace. Sophia is playing on the grass. She is 4 years old now. Robert brings her every Sunday. Sometimes he comes alone with her. Sometimes he comes with Danielle. But they always come. And that's what matters. "Grandma, look!" Sophia shouts, showing me a butterfly that landed on her hand. "How beautiful, my love," I tell her, smiling. Robert is sitting next to me. There is no longer any tension between us. There are no longer uncomfortable silences. We have learned to talk, to tell the truth, to set boundaries with love. "What are you thinking about, Mum?" he asks me. "Everything," I answer honestly. "How we got here. Everything we had to go through to find this peace." He nods. "It was hard. Yes, but necessary." Danielle is inside making lemonade. She decided to come today. She doesn't always come. And that's okay. We are still building our relationship. There are still difficult days. But there is respect. There are clear boundaries. And there is an intention to heal. When she comes out with the picture, she smiles at me. It's not the fake smile from before. It's genuine. Small, but genuine. "Thank you, Danielle," I say when she pours me a glass. "You're welcome, Patricia." We sit in silence for a moment, the three of us, watching Sophia run among the flowers. And I realize something. This is what I always wanted. Not a perfect family, but a real family, with its wounds, with its scars. But together, trying. That night, after they leave, I stay in the living room, looking at the walls of this house that I fought so hard to recover. The walls that saw my pain, my rage, my transformation. And I wonder, was it worth it? Was all that suffering worth it? All that battle? And the answer is yes, 1,000 times yes. Because I learned something I had never understood before. That a mother's love does not mean putting up with everything. It does not mean sacrificing your dignity to keep the peace. It does not mean disappearing so that others can shine. True love, healthy love, includes boundaries. It includes respect. It includes the ability to say, "This is not okay, and I will not allow it." For years, I believed that being a good mother meant being compliant. It meant saying yes to everything. It meant putting my son's needs above mine. Always. But that day, when Robert yelled at me, when he kicked me out of my own house, something inside me woke up. A voice that had been asleep for too long. A voice that said, "You matter too. Your space matters. Your dignity matters." And although it was painful, although it cost me tears and sleepless nights, defending that voice was the best thing I could have done. Not just for me, for Robert too. Because I taught him something he needed to learn, that mothers are human beings, with feelings, with boundaries, with a need for respect. And I taught him that true love is not blind. It is not unconditional in the sense of put up with everything without complaining. It is unconditional in the sense of I love you enough to tell you when you are wrong. I love you enough not to allow you to mistreat me. I love you enough to expect you to be better. I look at Michael's photo on the table. 8 years have passed since he left, and I still miss him. But I think he would be proud of me. Proud that I finally learned to value myself, to not disappear, to take up space without apologizing. I think of all the women who may be going through something similar. The mothers who are displaced by their daughters-in-law. The mothers-in-law who are seen as the enemy, the women who built homes with their own hands only to be kicked out of them. And I want to tell them something. You are not alone, and you are not wrong to defend your space. Being a mother does not mean being a doormat. It does not mean putting up with humiliations. It does not mean disappearing so that your son can be happy with his partner. You can love your son and still demand respect. You can want the best for him and still set boundaries. You can forgive and still remember. You can heal and still have scars. And if your son makes you choose between your dignity and his love, then it is not love he is offering you. It is control. It is manipulation. And you deserve better. I learned that silence can be powerful, but I also learned that there are times when we need to shout. We need to say stop, no more, no. And that shout does not make you a bad mother. It makes you human. It makes you strong. It makes you worthy. I also learned about forgiveness. True forgiveness. Not the cheap forgiveness that says, forget everything and move on as if nothing happened. But the deep forgiveness that says, I recognize your mistake. I recognize your remorse. And I choose to let go of the poison of resentment. Not for you, for me. Danielle and I will never be close friends. Maybe we will never have that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship that appears in movies. And that's okay. Not all relationships have to be deep. Some can be simply respectful, cordial, functional, and that is enough. The important thing is that Robert learned. He learned to see the manipulation. He learned to value his mother. He learned that a man doesn't have to choose between his wife and his mother. He can love both. He can honor both, without sacrificing either. And Sophia, my beautiful granddaughter, she is growing up seeing a different model. She is seeing her grandmother who respects herself. She is seeing her father who honors his mother. She is seeing her mother who works on her wounds. And maybe, just maybe, when she grows up, she won't repeat the patterns of pain. She won't see mothers-in-law as enemies. She won't feel like she has to compete for love. Because love is not a cake that runs out. It is not a competition of who is more important. Love multiplies, grows, expands, and in a healthy family there is room for everyone. I get up from the armchair, I walk through my house that I recovered, my space that I defended, and I feel peace. It is not the peace from before. That naive peace that comes from not knowing that you can be hurt. It is a deeper, stronger peace. The peace that comes from knowing that you can be hurt and still stand up, that you can bleed and still heal. I go up to my room. To my room. The one no one will ever take away from me again. I lie down in my bed, between my sheets, in my space, and I smile. Because I won. Not the battle against Danielle, not the battle against Mrs. Ellen. I won the battle against the version of myself that believed she didn't deserve space, that believed her value was only in what she could give to others, that believed being a mother meant disappearing, that Patricia died that day in the square. When I called the lawyer, when I decided that no more, and a new one was born, a stronger one who knows her worth, one who can love without losing herself. If my story helps even one mother open her eyes, if it gives strength to even one woman to defend herself, it will have been worth it. All the pain, all the tears, everything. Because mothers are also people. We also deserve respect. We also deserve space. We also deserve love. That doesn't come with impossible conditions. And if someone tells you otherwise, if someone tells you that you must put up with everything because that's what mothers do, don't believe them. Because being a mother is not being a martyr. It's being an example of strength, of dignity, of self-love. And that is what I want to be for Sophia, for Robert, for all the women who listen to this story. An example that you can fall, you can be hurt, you can cry, but you can also stand up. You can heal, you can reclaim your space, and you can live with peace, with dignity, with your head held high. My name is Patricia Miller. I am 56 years old, and this is my story. The story of how I lost my family for a moment, and how, by defending myself, I got them back in a healthier way, more real, stronger. It wasn't easy. Nothing worthwhile is. But it was worth it. Every tear, every battle, every sleepless night. It was worth it. And if you are going through something similar, I want you to know this. You are also worth it. Your space is worth it. Your dignity is worth it. Don't give up. Don't disappear. Don't make yourself small so that others can feel big. Shine. Take up space. Defend what is yours. And if you have to do it alone, do it. Because it is better to be alone with dignity than accompanied with humiliation. The mothers of the world deserve better. We deserve love that honors us, that respects us, that sees us. And if we are not receiving it, we have the right, the duty, even, to demand it. Because we are mothers. But we are also women. We are people. We are human beings worthy of respect. Never forget it. And if my story gave you even a little strength, share it. Share it with someone who needs it, with a mother who is doubting her worth, with a woman who needs to hear that it's okay to defend herself, because together we are stronger. Together we can change these patterns of pain. Together we can build healthier families. One story at a time, one mother at a time, one boundary at a time. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for allowing me to share my pain and my healing. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. It's never too late to say, no more. It's never too late to be free. With love and hope, Patricia Miller.